I think my mother did exactly the right thing. I think it's absolutely extraordinary.
The document was ready. The signatures had been marked, and within minutes, Camilla's name was expected to disappear from the Royal Foundation's governing records. But before William could authorize the change, Princess Anne placed her hand over the final page and stopped him. Her objection was not emotional. It was procedural, deliberate, and impossible to ignore. The Queen Consort's position would not be erased without every eligible trustee being forced to cast a vote. Before we go deeper into what this really means for the royal family, make sure to subscribe so you don't miss a single update. William entered the restricted meeting convinced the hardest part was over. He had gathered the documents and reduced the decision to one final signature. The Royal Foundation, an organization managing charitable work connected to senior royals, carried more than goodwill. Its records showed who held influence, whose voice shaped its future, and which royal stood closest to its authority. Removing Camilla would not simply alter a page. It would announce that her place within the monarchy's charitable structure had ended. Anne understood that consequence before anyone dared to say aloud. She did not defend Camilla's judgment or excuse the influence the Queen Consort had gathered. Instead, the Princess Royal challenged the method. A trustee vote meant every authorized board member had to approve or reject the change. Without it, William would use the weight of his crown to settle a present dispute. To her, that danger reached beyond one name. William felt the challenge. He had expected questions, perhaps resistance from Camilla's allies, but not this. Anne was the senior royal he believed would understand why delay could weaken the Foundation's direction. Her refusal felt like a public rejection of his authority. The prince tightened his grip on the pen, lowered it toward the authorization line, and prepared to finish what he had begun. Anne moved first. She slid the folder beyond his reach, placed her palm over the final page, and said, "Not without the full table." The room fell silent. Revised letterhead sat beneath the unsigned order. A new patronage structure had been drafted. Even a public statement waited for release, written as though approval were certain. Anne now saw the truth. This meeting had never been designed to decide anything. It had been arranged to confirm a result William considered inevitable. Then she ordered the full voting register brought in. One trustee was absent. One name remained unchecked. And as William watched the unsigned page disappear into Anne's hands, the confrontation stopped being about one name and became a struggle over who was truly allowed to command the monarchy's future. To the outside world, it looked like a disagreement over procedure. Inside the family, it was painfully personal. William saw the Foundation as the moral inheritance he would someday carry into the throne. Anne saw it as an institution that must survive every personality, including his. And Camilla saw her name becoming a test of whether years of loyalty could be erased in a single morning. None of them entered the conflict without scars. William had spent years shaping the Royal Foundation around the duties he believed would define the next reign. The organization managed major charitable work connected to the senior royals, but to him, it meant something deeper. It represented the public values he hoped to carry forward with Catherine and their children. Camilla's continued presence felt like an unresolved claim from the current era, one that might still influence the future long after he believed control should have passed. Anne saw the danger differently. She had served through changing reigns, shifting loyalties, and private battles disguised as official decisions. The Princess Royal believed rules mattered most when powerful people wanted to ignore them. William's confidence worried her because he was beginning to treat future authority as though it already belonged to him. She did not want to weaken him. She wanted to stop him from learning the wrong lesson about power. Camilla received the news alone. She unfolded the briefing note, read the final paragraph, then returned to it, as though the words might change. A briefing note was a written summary used to explain an official decision before it became public. This one told the Queen Consort that her name had been marked for removal. She placed it face down only after reading it twice. William felt betrayed for another reason. He had expected resistance from Camilla, not from Anne. Catherine found him standing beside an unlit fireplace, still holding the unused pen. The princess asked whether he regretted the decision. He looked at her and said he regretted only being stopped before he could finish it. She heard the anger, but she also heard something else beneath it: fear. Anne moved quietly after the meeting. She requested private copies of every memo exchanged before the removal was prepared. The request suggested she suspected more than impatience. Someone had bypassed the Foundation's notification process, meaning Camilla was meant to learn of the decision only after the new structure had already been approved. Catherine then noticed a handwritten instruction on one page. William had not written it. Anne had never seen it. Someone inside the Foundation had accelerated the removal, without telling either of them. But before anyone could identify who had rushed the process, Anne uncovered the incident that had turned William's private doubts into a decision he was prepared to force through. The crisis had not begun in the meeting room. It began 6 weeks earlier, during a Royal Foundation reception at St. James's Palace, when Camilla stepped toward a lectern reserved for William and announced a new charitable initiative under the Foundation's authority. The prince had not approved it. Anne had not seen it, yet the documents were already printed, the donors were already seated, and the cameras were already waiting. That ceremony became the point of no return. Camilla introduced the Crown Community Partnership as though every detail had already been settled. The initiative promised new support for vulnerable communities, but the budget, leadership, and purpose had never been approved by William. The Royal Foundation was the charitable body linked to the senior royals, meaning any public announcement under its name carried real financial and reputational weight. Once the Queen Consort spoke, the project appeared official. William understood the trap immediately. Donors were listening. Press representatives were taking notes. Any public correction would have humiliated Camilla and damaged confidence in the Foundation at the same time. The prince remained beside her, offered the applause expected of him, and allowed the announcement to stand. Outwardly, he looked controlled. Inside, something had broken. William waited until the reception ended. Then he entered a private antechamber, removed the prepared speech from Camilla's folder, and asked why his name had been used to validate a project he had never authorized. He kept his voice low, but the restraint made the accusation sharper. This was not a misunderstanding to him. It was a boundary crossed in public. Camilla defended herself with wounded certainty. She said Charles had approved the arrangement, and that she believed the remaining signatures were routine. The Queen Consort insisted she had been trying to strengthen the Foundation, not seize it. William heard the explanation, but he did not accept it. Royal approval, he told her, was not the same as trustee consent. Anne entered moments later and felt the tension before either spoke. She saw Camilla gripping the back of a chair and William standing near the closed door. The Princess Royal also noticed an unsigned approval sheet lying between them. It carried Charles's initials, but the required trustee endorsement was missing. Someone had treated the king's approval as though it could replace the Foundation's rules. William made his decision that night. Back at Kensington Palace, he instructed his private secretary to prepare a full review of Camilla's status, including the legal process for removing her name. Camilla asked him one final question before leaving St. James's Palace. Did he truly believe she had planned to embarrass him? William opened the door and said nothing. Anne quietly kept the abandoned sheet. 6 weeks later, she carried it into the vote meeting, proving that both sides had crossed a line. Now, with the original authorization in her possession, William could no longer call this a simple removal, and the confrontation could no longer be avoided. When Anne asked William to remain behind, every aide left the room. No secretaries, no legal advisors. No one to soften what came next. She placed the St. James's authorization sheet beside his unsigned removal order and told him that both documents represented the same danger. A royal using personal certainty to bypass collective authority. William stared at the papers, then at her. This was no longer an aunt advising a nephew. It was a challenge. Anne locked the disputed files inside the conference room and kept the key beside her hand. The Princess Royal wanted no advisor interrupting, no official language hiding the truth, and no senior figure reshaping the exchange afterward. The authorization sheet was the incomplete approval behind Camilla's public announcement. The removal order was the document prepared to erase her name. Together, they proved that both sides had tried to move faster than the rules allowed. William accused her directly. The prince said she had spent years warning against blurred roles, private influence, and unchecked access. Yet now she was protecting the very presence she had once questioned. Camilla had crossed the line first. She had used the Foundation's name, the king's initials, and his future authority without permission. Why, he demanded, should she now be protected from the consequences? Anne did not raise her voice. She told William that Camilla had been wrong, But his anger did not make his own shortcut right. The future king could not condemn one abuse of authority by creating another. She was not defending the Queen Consort. She was defending him from becoming a monarch who believed good intentions excused unchecked power. William pushed his chair back so sharply that it struck the wall. He admitted the St. James's announcement was not his only fear. The prince believed Camilla's growing network inside the foundation was creating loyalties that could survive Charles's reign and restrict the next one. To him, this was not only about control now. It was about whether his future could be quietly shaped before he inherited it. Anne listened, then produced one more document, an internal instruction, meaning a private written order sent through the foundation, directed staff to prepare revised records before the trustees had even been consulted. It carried the signature of William's own director. William read the wording twice. He had requested a review, not a completed purge. Someone had turned his concern into a predetermined outcome and used his authority to make resistance appear pointless. For the first time, his certainty fractured. Anne placed the unused pen directly between them. "You may lead the next reign," she said, "but you do not own every room you enter." Then she demanded the director appear before the full board. If he refused, the vote would become an investigation into William's own office. He left shaken. But the greater shock was still ahead. Camilla's fate belonged to neither Anne, William, nor even Charles alone. Royal titles could command attention, but inside the foundation boardroom, titles did not automatically command votes. The governing charter divided power among royal patrons, independent trustees, financial guardians, and appointed chairs. William could shape the future. Anne could stop a rushed decision. Camilla could defend her record. Yet none of them could legally decide the matter alone. The balance rested with people who had spent years bowing to royalty and were now being asked to judge it. William understood the numbers before the meeting resumed. The governing charter was the written rulebook defining how the foundation made binding decisions, and it required a majority vote before any royal name could be removed from its public identity. The prince held influence through members of his future strategy committee, but influence was not control. Anne commanded loyalty among long-serving trustees, while Camilla had fewer allies and stronger protection from the rules. Charles received the voting register in his private study. The king read Camilla's name first, then William's proposed amendment beneath it. He knew why his son wanted a clean boundary around the next reign. The future monarch could not build authority while wondering whether loyalties from the present court would continue shaping decisions behind him. Charles also understood what removal would mean to his wife. Camilla had spent years beside him through public hostility, private strain, and the slow work of acceptance. Erasing her without dignity would make that service appear temporary, as though her place had survived only because he had protected it. The monarch closed the folder and said nothing. Sir Malcolm Hargreaves now held the most dangerous position in the room. As the independent chair, the official responsible for leading the board without serving royal interests, he controlled the likely deciding vote. William could not read him. Anne could not pressure him. Camilla did not know whether he favored removal, retention, or a compromise neither side had considered. Anne found that compromise buried inside the charter. One neglected clause allowed the board to suspend a royal patron's operational authority, while preserving the name in an honorary role. The provision could stop William from erasing Camilla completely, but it could also strip the Queen Consort of the influence she was fighting to retain. Charles refused to decide for them. When an aide asked whether he would speak privately to the trustees, the king turned his wedding ring once around his finger and closed the file. "Tell William I will not save either of them from the vote." Hours later, a sealed statement reached Sir Malcolm. Camilla had signed it herself. She was requesting permission to enter the boardroom and address every trustee in person. With Charles refusing to intervene and the Queen Consort preparing to face the room alone, private strategy was about to become irreversible consequence. Camilla entered without Charles beside her. No ceremonial escort. No reassuring hand at her back. Only a prepared statement, and the knowledge that every person at the table had already seen the document designed to remove her. William avoided her eyes. Anne watched carefully. Then the Queen Consort placed her speech on the table, decided not to read it, and addressed the room in her own words. What followed changed the emotional balance completely. Camilla had been granted 10 minutes before the trustees began their debate. The board had reconvened under strict confidentiality, meaning every member was expected to keep the discussion private until an official decision was released. She understood why that mattered. A public leak could turn a governance dispute into open warfare between the present reign and the next. Camilla faced the charges without looking toward Charles's empty place. She had announced the Crown Community Partnership without William's final approval. She had allowed the foundation's name to appear on printed material, and she had acted as though the king's support could replace the authority of the governing board. The Queen Consort admitted each point. Camilla did not blame staff. She did not blame Charles. She said her eagerness had crossed a boundary, and that William had every right to challenge what happened at St. James's Palace. Then her voice changed. She said complete erasure would suggest she had been tolerated only while the current monarch remained strong enough to protect her. William heard both pain and warning in those words. The prince had wanted a clean separation, but he had not considered what that separation would say about Camilla's years beside his father. Success for his future could look like humiliation for her past. That truth unsettled him. Camilla then surrendered the ground everyone expected her to defend. She offered to give up all decision-making authority if the trustees preserved a limited honorary association. An honorary role meant her name could remain connected to the foundation without giving her control over budgets, appointments, or strategy. Camilla also produced a private note from the foundation director. The message encouraged her to announce the initiative and described William's final approval as a formality. The Queen Consort had kept the correspondence. Now it proved the director had pushed both sides toward collision. William read the note and finally understood. His own demand for a review had been turned into a purge, while Camilla's ambition had been encouraged into overreach. Someone had tried to gain power by making reconciliation impossible. Camilla folded her unused statement into 4 careful squares. Her fingers trembled only once. William looked toward her, but she had already lowered her eyes. Anne called for a recess before the ballot. She told William the next decision had to be made privately, not as an heir, but as a man facing the damage done in his name. The vote was minutes away, yet no charter clause could repair what stood between them. Only an unguarded conversation could do that. Anne did not negotiate the compromise herself. She brought William and Camilla into a small library, closed the door, and left them alone. For the first time since the crisis began, there were no trustees, no advisors, and no prepared statements. Only 2 people tied to the same crown and divided by what it represented. William remained standing. Camilla sat near the window. Neither apologized immediately, but the silence was no longer hostile. It was exhausted. Anne had insisted on the meeting because procedure could stop a bad decision, but it could not heal the anger beneath it. The trustees were preparing to vote, yet the Princess Royal believed no institution could survive if its leaders used rules to avoid personal truth. William and Camilla had to speak without rank, protection, or an audience. Camilla already knew the terms. She could keep an honorary association with the foundation, meaning her name would remain connected to its work without giving her control. But she would lose operational influence, access to budgets, public launch authority, and the right to announce new programs without board approval. Her place would survive, her power would not. William spoke first. He said the St. James's ceremony had made him feel that the future he had been told to prepare for could still be rearranged without his consent. The prince had stood beside Camilla while she announced a project under his authority, unable to object without humiliating the family. That helplessness had hardened into anger. Camilla answered with equal honesty. Every reduction in her role felt like the family preparing to erase her before Charles was gone. The Queen Consort admitted that fear had made her reach for visibility and mistake public presence for security. She had wanted proof that her years beside the king would not vanish with his reign. William still held the stronger position. After the director's misconduct was exposed, the future king could demand complete removal and likely win the vote. Anne had made clear that she would not block a properly conducted ballot. He could take the victory. He only had to accept what it would cost. Camilla placed a signed resignation letter before him. It surrendered every operational power she held. She asked for one thing: do not make her humiliation the first symbol of his future reign. William read the letter, then tore it once down the middle. He told her surrender offered in fear was not reconciliation. For the first time, the prince sat opposite her. William crossed out the removal clause and drafted a narrower motion. Camilla would remain honorary royal patron, but her governance powers would end permanently. Anne returned and accepted the compromise on one condition. William had to admit publicly that the original process was wrong. The private decision was complete. By morning, the world would know Anne had stopped an erasure and forced a future king to govern differently. By sunrise, confidentiality had collapsed. The dispute that began around a polished boardroom table now dominated every royal bulletin in Britain. Yet the public was not reacting only to Camilla's name or William's failed removal. The image that captured the nation was simpler. Anne leaving the Foundation headquarters with the original unsigned document under her arm, while William followed several steps behind. To some, she had defied the future king. To others, she had protected him. The Royal Foundation issued its announcement before breakfast. Camilla would remain honorary royal patron, a symbolic position that preserved her name while giving her no control over budgets, appointments, or strategy. The statement also confirmed an independent review into the director's conduct. That review mattered because it shifted the crisis away from family rivalry and toward the misuse of royal authority inside the institution. Clarence House called the decision a dignified transition. William's office described it as governance reform, meaning new rules designed to make the foundation more accountable. Anne's team released nothing. The Princess Royal understood that any personal statement could make the outcome look like her triumph over her nephew. Silence kept the focus on the rules she had defended. William then did what few expected. In a recorded address released by his office, the prince admitted that structural changes had been prepared before the full board had been consulted. He did not hide behind the director. He did not blame Camilla. The future king accepted that his urgency had allowed others to act too far in his name. Camilla watched the address alone from the same sitting room where she had first read the removal notice. The Queen Consort remained still until William recognized her years of service. Then she closed her eyes and released a breath she seemed to have held since the crisis began. Public reaction hardened around one image. Outside Buckingham Palace, a newspaper vendor raised the morning edition of the Crown Chronicle. The front page carried Anne's photograph beneath the words, "Anne stops the erasure." Nearby, broadcasters argued over whether she had challenged William or saved his credibility. A crowd gathered against the palace railings. One woman held a handwritten sign reading, "Rules protect the crown too." The message spread because it captured the deeper meaning of the conflict. This was no longer simply William against Camilla. It had become a debate about whether the monarchy could demand trust while avoiding accountability within its own walls. Anne emerged not as Camilla's defender, but as the guardian of a process larger than any royal. As television reports announced the coming vote count, an aide asked whether she felt vindicated. "No," she replied, relieved. Then the result arrived. The headlines celebrated her intervention, but the unexpected margin would reveal the deeper truth. Anne's real victory was not preserving Camilla's name. It was transforming William's leadership. The revised motion passed by 11 votes to 1. Camilla's name remained, but her control ended. The director who manipulated the process resigned. William accepted responsibility for moving too quickly, and Anne, having blocked the future king at the most decisive moment, refused every attempt to portray herself as his enemy. She had not defeated him. She had forced him to prove that the next reign would be governed by restraint, accountability, and the courage to reverse a decision made in anger. Camilla signed the revised role agreement without requesting a single change. The document preserved her position as honorary royal patron, a symbolic title that kept her name connected to the foundation while removing every operational, financial, and strategic power she once held. She would not control budgets. She would not approve appointments. And she would never again announce a public initiative without written authorization from the full board. The foundation changed with her. New rules required written trustee approval before any royal patron could launch a program, alter the institution's identity, or speak publicly in its name. The decision mattered because royal influence had once been allowed to blur the boundary between personal wishes and official authority. That boundary was now unmistakable. William found Anne alone in the emptied boardroom after the vote. The prince admitted that he had believed she was choosing Camilla over him. For hours, he had seen her resistance as betrayal. Now he understood that she had been protecting the crown he would inherit from the anger he had carried into that room. Anne answered without triumph. The Princess Royal told him leadership was not measured by how rarely a person was challenged. It was measured by what that person did when the challenge was justified. She had not questioned his future. She had demanded that he become worthy of it. Charles thanked Anne privately for stopping the dispute from becoming an act of family vengeance. The king then spoke to William through a recorded conversation, preserved in the royal office account. He told his son that accepting correction had made him more prepared for the throne, not less. The final revelation removed every remaining doubt. The single vote against the compromise belonged to the foundation director. His correspondence proved that he had encouraged Camilla's announcement while accelerating William's removal plan, hoping to gain influence during the transition between reigns. His resignation ended the struggle completely. Before leaving, William returned to the chair he had pushed against the wall during his confrontation with Anne. He lifted it, placed it carefully back at the table, and set the unused fountain pen beside the approved resolution. She watched from the doorway. This time, neither needed to speak. Anne had blocked William, but she had not weakened him. She had stopped anger from becoming policy, protected Camilla from erasure without preserving her power, and proved that no royal stood above the rules. The name remained, the authority changed, the manipulation ended, and William walked away not merely as the man destined to inherit the crown, but as a future king who had learned one of its hardest lessons. Sometimes the person who stops you is the person most determined to see you succeed. Thanks for watching. Please don't forget to like and subscribe, and we will see you in next one.